Hello, grievers. Welcome back. This is part 2 to the 7 stages of grief. I'll go over the last 3 stages. And if you haven't listened to part 1, it covers the first 4 stages, but you might be past that already. So, yeah, I'm just sitting here sipping on some coffee, reminding myself how I've been slacking like no tomorrow with this podcast. I have some things going on, some new tasks that I didn't originally plan on doing when I started this. So, my energy and whatnot has been focused on some other cool things, to say the least. On a side note, I aspirated the other day. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. I'm bringing this up because I find that my voice has been a little bit deeper and raspier since the event. If this ever happens to you, which I really hope it doesn't, just stay calm. It's my best advice. Stay calm and go somewhere people could find you in case something does happen. But stay calm. All right, I'm going to be honest here. The last 3 stages have been super dreadful for me to come up with any examples from my personal life. And yeah, it's likely because I'm still going through them, but it's okay. We'll go through it. And if I do think of anything, I'll bring it up in the moment. After I'm done here, though, I want to put a twist on this. I want to talk about different stories. There's been some things on my mind, and I want to talk about them. All right, let's get these out of the way so we can go to the fun stuff. Stage 5, the upward turn. As Well-Beings puts it, this is the light at the end of the tunnel, more or less. Any of your extreme emotions, they might be subsiding at this point. Goals, outlooks, all the good stuff, it's starting to come back to you. I guess I do have an example. This cool task that I've taken on, it's always something I wanted to do, but never really got the chance to, and the timing just so happens to be right. So here we are. So don't give up on your goals. If they're meant for you, they will happen. All right. Stage 6, reconstruction and working through. Well-Beings puts this as finding meaning in your life again, recollecting hope. I guess I started reconstructing right at the beginning. I had like a traumatic memory of my mom, and I mentioned this in one of my first podcasts, and I had to try out EMDR for it, and it worked. It worked. It really did. It's 6 years later, and I can still vouch for that. So there are new things that have come up over the 6 years that I'm starting to find meaning for and strategies for. And they're not substantial, but they're just like little things that come up, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I might need help with that one. For example, I'm 33 years old, and I feel like this is an age that I could really use some answers from my mother, especially health issues. I'm finding that things are coming up, and I can't go to her to be like, hey, did this start happening to you at this age? Like, I have my aunt and other family members and whatever to a degree, but essentially you're a copy of your mom, right? So it'd be kind of nice to have her to discuss that with, mainly because she's related to me on that biological level. There's only so much you can talk to your dad about when you're a female. So essentially, that's been my work through. And I mean, every day is a work through. You know what I'm saying? But that one right there, not having mom to have some female discussions with. Anyways, let's move on to the last stage, which is acceptance and hope. I think this sounds pretty straightforward. You're basically living life again. The grief is there, it's always going to be there, but it's not even remotely as tense as it may have been. There might still be triggers. Doesn't matter what stage you're in, triggers can still happen, right? But you'll be a little bit better equipped for them. That's what I'm finding, anyways. And just keep in mind that regardless of what stage you're in, like, you can slip backwards. Grief is not linear. So the last thing you want to do and this has happened to me, this is why I'm bringing it up, is get stuck in a stage that you've already made your way out of. So for this one, like I've accepted my mom's passing. There's definitely moments that I wish she was here, which is natural, but the loss itself, I've definitely accepted. It's more or less regaining the motivation. Like grief, it knocked me down. It pushed my nervous system to this level that I'm just starting to understand now and finding things that are helping. 5 years ago, I wouldn't even have thought of these things. But just going through the stages and having different education, it's taught me there's a lot of levels to grief. One thing I've noticed personally is that if I do fall backwards, I don't stay there long just because I've been able to recognize it and I have a toolbox that I've created for myself that has strategies. So I can vouch and say that they've worked. And you might have to replace your tools. Sometimes they expire and you need to find new ways, but it's doable. Your brain is capable of so many things. One mentality I've had to take on is the past is the past, and there's nothing that you can do about it. The present moment is literally a gift. That's why they call it the present. And it is yet the hardest place to be in life. This is something I work at every day because whenever I put myself in the past or in the future, it's just anxiety. And I have to start doing things to get that anxiety off my shoulders. One thing that's been super helpful, and you probably hear this all the time, is mindfulness. Like, I think we need more education on this one alone. It needs to be pushed. And it is super hard to do, but once you've trained your brain to create more positive thinking and alternative ways to combat situations, you'd be surprised what can happen. Our brains are plastic, they're constantly molding based on our experiences and our environment, so anything is possible. And there you have it, folks. That's it. That's the end of the 7 stages of grief. I am relieved. I just can't do this anymore, basically, because I'm a perfectionist. And when I was first trying to do this, like I said, I couldn't find examples, but it seems as though I found a few as we progressed. Seems like the first four were pretty easy, which makes sense because I've been through them. But I hope this was helpful for some of you, all of you, whoever's listening. If you want more information, you can always Google 7 stages of grief, or you can check out the website I pulled this resource from, which was wellbeingscounseling.ca. All right, let's turn the tables here. Let's get into the thing I was talking about earlier, and that is paranormal activity. Yes, that is right. You heard me correctly. I love this shit. I could literally talk about it all day, night, all week, all month, all year. Don't stop me now. This is prime topic, okay? I grew up in an old farmhouse in the country, right across the road from a church that had a cemetery, and this cemetery houses many of my late relatives. My bedroom faced the cemetery. It was perfectly framed by my window. I should upload a photo to Insta so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. It's quite interesting, but I went to sleep with the cemetery. I rose with the cemetery. As long as I was in my bed, it was in my visual field. But it didn't bother me having that there. It didn't really dawn on me. There was no discomfort. Just another day, another cemetery, like whatever. But as a kid, my grandma would always go over there to visit, so I'd go with her. And I was convinced that those obelisk burial monuments, those tall upright stone pillars that look like mini towers, yeah, I was convinced that gnomes lived in there. Some of them had specific outlinings that straight up looked like doors. So I thought that's where the gnomes were getting access into their homes. But one day I examined the door simply because I wanted to open it and see what their little setup was like. And that's when my logical reasoning came in to disappoint me. Obviously wasn't a door. There were no gnomes. It was then I realized that I was delusional and I moved past that and I never revisited the gnome theory again until right now. So the farmhouse I lived in is over 100 years old at this point. It's always been in the family, as far as I understand, and my dad actually still lives there. The church and the cemetery are thriving. Service every Sunday. People are still being buried there. Yeah, it's been around since like the 1800s. Now, there have been a few paranormal events that have happened since my time in the farmhouse. I lived there since I was a baby up until I went to university, so about, what, 19 years old? As I get older, people tell me some stories and I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, maybe there's a correlation to some of the things I experienced." For the remainder of the time, I'll talk about some of those stories, but there's definitely so many more. A bit of a backstory. Before my time, there was a funeral inside the farmhouse. Yeah, a funeral. It was open casket, and not too sure why they didn't just choose to do it over at the church, but apparently someone's living quarters is the next best option. But moving forward from this event to when I was about, I don't know, 11, 12, I had a friend over one night, and we were sitting in the living room, minding our business, watching TV, and all of a sudden, I got this overwhelming feeling of being watched. It came out of nowhere, and it didn't happen any other time in the night. It just, at this moment, it happened. Of course, it was coming from the area where the open casket originally was. So I looked over at my friend and I'm like, "Do you feel that?" And she goes, "Yeah." And we just sat there paralyzed. I wanted to run over and turn the light on so bad, but I could not get up. Like the feeling of terror in a moment where there's nothing there is super confusing. And when you're a kid, I feel like you pick up on that stuff so much quicker. But like as an adult, I don't find those situations to be as common as they were when I was younger. Then again, I'm older and I probably don't notice or I just tolerate it differently, but there have been some events as an adult that I've experienced, but I guess they've been more dream related. Had some pretty weird dreams. Long story short, that overwhelming feeling of dread to this day leaves a question mark in my mind. Like, was it related to the funeral? Is it tied to the cemetery? I have no idea. There's definitely some history on that farm, so it could be anything. But that feeling of being watched, that's a kicker. I'm sure some of you can relate to that one. This last farmhouse story occurred after my grandma passed away, rest her soul. She had lived on this property as from the time I was born up until the time she died. She didn't pass away on the property, but she did get buried in the cemetery, the one and only cemetery. Now, this situation, I just assumed it was always her because it's something she would have done. I listened to a lot of music, and as a kid, I had a stereo in my bedroom that came with a remote control. So whenever I would do my makeup, I would put on my music, and then the remote control would be right next to me if I wanted to change a song or whatever, right? So on this particular day, I had the remote sitting on my hope chest, if any of you know what one of those is, directly behind me. It was sitting right on top. It was a flat surface. You could not miss what was sitting on top of that thing. So, doing my makeup, I go to turn around to grab the remote and it's gone. I'm like, okay, literally 3 minutes ago I was just using it. Like I had already been well into my tasks at this point. I'd listened to a couple songs already. I used the remote. So the fact that it wasn't there when I turned around, I'm like, where else could it be? I go over to my bed thinking, maybe I sat it in the sheets. I ruffle around, ripped my bed apart, nothing. Looked under the bed, nothing. Well, I went back over to the hope chest. There was a case of water sitting on top of it. Moved that, nothing. Looked behind it, nothing. I searched for like 5 to 10 minutes. And when I gave up and turned around, that friggin' remote was sitting on top of the hope chest. I just stared at it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I started to question my sanity at that point. It was not there, or else I would not have went on a rampage looking for it. I tell my mom and she goes, "It's all in your head." Like, thanks, mom. I already went through that with myself, you gaslighter. If it was all in my head, I wouldn't have went looking for it. Rest her soul as well. Immediately, I thought it was my grandma. I could visualize her standing there laughing at me, just ripping the place apart. Then again, living next to the cemetery, it could have been a spirit floating around, messing with me. Regardless, that remote, it was missing. It vanished into thin air and reappeared like magic. If there's anybody out there that can explain that, I would like to hear it, because I certainly can't. And I've tried. I hadn't really seen anything in the house. I felt things and experienced weird happenings and would have super interesting dreams. Actually, now that I'm talking out loud, I can't, that's not true. I did see something weird one time. I did, and I thought it was my imagination. And I remember asking my mom about it, and she said she saw the same thing. It was a shadow both of us saw in the same place. When somebody else says that they've seen what you've seen, it's a weird relief of confirmation. It's like, maybe I'm not crazy, or maybe we're both crazy. Who knows? Either way, there's something going on here. I love hearing other people's stories. If I know someone has something to share, you can bet your bottom dollar that we're talking about it. I love this stuff. But yeah, I'm a big dreamer. I dream of deceased people and other things. They're very vivid. I remember a lot of them very clearly, especially the ones that left an impact. I'll never stop believing in the unknown. There has to be multiple planes out there. The reason that I'm putting this in here today is because without having experienced the paranormal side throughout my life, I don't think I would have been as well equipped for some of the losses that have occurred. I've been exposed to death since I was about 10, which there's lots of people exposed way younger, absolutely. But 10, it's still a pretty young age, and being able to have that paranormal side has given me a different understanding around death and helped me through those stages of grief. It's helped me with acceptance, knowing that energy doesn't die. It's the law of physics. I know somehow, some way, she's out there. Same with my grandma and papa, other relatives that have passed away, friends. Paranormal to me is that unknown energy, right? I haven't had anything physically happen, like flickering of lights or seeing the apparition or anything of my mom. Like, I've dreamt of her, but she sends me animals, like the foxes. Literally a few weeks ago, I had an experience. It was unbelievable. If I didn't have a snippet of video, no one would believe me. And I say snippet because my camera would not work. Would not. And when I left the area, it worked suddenly. So I'm like, all right, that was spiritual and that was cool. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. I hope you all have a lovely day. February will be a good month, I promise. And as always, if you want to share any stories, DM me. I'm always open to it. Until next time, thank you for joining.